Little girl found a German shepherd crying behind a dumpster. What happened next left everyone in tears. The sound was barely there, a soft cry, hidden beneath concrete and chaos. What followed was a journey so unbelievable, even those who witnessed it struggled to explain it. This is the kind of story that hurts your heart and then heals it. If you've ever doubted kindness, stay with us. This one's for you. It was the kind of morning that made the world feel like it had hit pause, cold, quiet, and wrapped in the gray hush of early winter. Behind the old corner grocery store, the alley stretched long and narrow, cluttered with discarded boxes, broken pallets, and the metallic stench of rusted dumpsters. The streetlights still blinked overhead, not yet sure whether to turn off or stay lit, casting everything in a dim, sleepy glow. Footsteps echoed faintly against damp concrete as Anna walked just a few steps behind her older brother, her arms tucked tightly into her jacket, her breath visible in the air like tiny clouds that disappeared too fast. They were heading home the way they always did, a shortcut that wasn't beautiful but was familiar. Anna was 8, quiet by nature, the kind of girl who noticed the things other people missed. The chipped corner of a window, the way a bird tilted its head before flying, the sound of something different. That morning, as they passed the dumpsters near the back of the store, she slowed. Her brother kept walking, his hoodie up, earbuds in, already a block ahead. But she stopped, frozen in place. There was again a sound. Faint, so almost too soft. It wasn't a cat. It wasn't a rat. It was something broken. She turned her head slightly, holding her breath, narrowing her eyes toward the source. The sound came again. A cry. Not loud, not desperate, but filled with something raw, like a whimper holding back a scream. A sound that carried pain and silence in equal measure. She stepped closer to the dumpster, careful, her sneakers barely making a sound on the wet pavement. And then she saw it. Huddled in the corner behind the dumpster, half hidden beneath a torn piece of cardboard and a broken shopping cart, was a dog. A large German shepherd. His fur was matted, patchy, coated in dirt and grime. One of his ears was folded unnaturally, and his front paw was tucked under his chest like it had been hurt. His body trembled, but his eyes, those eyes, stayed locked on hers. Not wild. Not angry, just pleading. Anna knelt without thinking, the world narrowing to just the space between them. "Hey," she whispered, her voice barely above the wind. The dog didn't move, just blinked slowly, shivering, watching. She reached out halfway but stopped. Not because she was scared, but because she didn't want to scare him. "It's okay," she said softly. "I see you." Behind her, her brother's voice rang out from the end of the alley. "Anna, come on. We're gonna be late." She looked back once, then turned toward the dog again. He was still there, still trembling, still broken. "I have to go," she whispered, her voice tight. "But I'll come back, I promise." Later that evening, long after the sun had disappeared and dinner had been eaten in the usual distracted silence, Anna stood by her bedroom window, watching the street lamps flicker on. Her brother was upstairs playing games. Her parents were talking in low voices behind closed doors. But all she could hear was that sound, that cry from the alley. It had crawled into her ears and stayed there, echoing against her ribs. She looked down at her hands, then toward her closet, where she'd stashed an old towel, a flashlight, and the crust from her sandwich wrapped in a napkin. She didn't say anything out loud. She didn't need to. She opened her window quietly and slipped her small body through, landing gently in the grass below. The air was colder now, the streets quieter, but her eyes were steady, and her footsteps knew exactly where they were going. "I'm going back." Anna wasn't the kind of girl people remembered after the first meeting. She didn't speak unless she had something to say, didn't interrupt conversations, and didn't raise her hand in class unless she was absolutely sure of the answer. But she noticed things, always had. The torn strap on her teacher's bag. The way the wind always rattled the same broken vent behind the library. The ant trail beneath the slide at the park. She saw the smallest changes, the softest shifts in light or sound. And while other children filled their days with noise and rushing and laughter, Anna stood just outside it all, content to watch the world breathe. At home, the silence was different. It wasn't peaceful. It was worn. Her parents both worked long hours at jobs that kept the lights on, but not much more. Her mother came home tired, her shoulders always tense, her voice clipped even when she tried to be gentle. Her father had grown quieter with time, the kind of quiet that builds up like dust and settles on everything: dinner, mornings, birthdays. They loved her, she knew that, but in the way people love from a distance. They didn't ask too many questions, didn't check her drawings, didn't notice when she spent more and more time in the backyard staring at birds. Anna found comfort in the company of things that didn't need words. The robins that returned to the same tree each spring. The squirrel missing part of his tail who showed up like clockwork on the fence. The cats that prowled the alley behind her building, sharp-eyed and silent. She didn't pet them, didn't try to catch them. She just watched and they let her. Animals never asked her to be louder or bolder or more normal. They just existed, and that was enough. Her town was small, the kind of place where streets had more cracks than fresh paint, where the diner still had a jukebox but only one song played without skipping, where kids grew up just to leave and parents stayed because they didn't know what else to do. It wasn't bad, not really. Just tired. There were pockets of it that felt forgotten, alleys that led to nowhere, playgrounds with one broken swing, fields overgrown with weeds that no one bothered to mow anymore. Anna knew them all. She walked those hidden paths like a second map lived in her bones. She liked the places no one else noticed. That's why the dog stayed in her mind. That single look, that single moment. It didn't blur with the rest of the day the way other memories did. His eyes had held something that tugged at a place she didn't even know existed in her. Not pity, not even fear, but recognition. Like he saw her too. Two creatures used to silence. Two hearts that knew what it felt like to be invisible. All through dinner, she barely touched her food. Her parents were talking about bills, her brother was on his phone, and no one noticed that she hadn't said more than 3 words all evening. She nodded when spoken to, smiled when expected, but her mind was still in that alley, with the whimper, the cold pavement, the slow blink of a dog too tired to hope. When bedtime came, she waited. Lights off, footsteps fading down the hall, the gentle click of the dishwasher starting. She sat up in the dark and pulled the covers off. From under her bed, she pulled out a napkin wrapped around a piece of leftover chicken she'd saved from her plate. She slipped on her shoes, grabbed the flashlight she kept in her art drawer, and tiptoed to the window. The air outside was colder now, brushing against her cheeks like breath. But she didn't hesitate. The alley wasn't far. She knew the way even without looking. Her feet moved on instinct, her heart steady, her fingers curled tight around the napkin. The wind rustled papers near the dumpster as she reached it, and she crouched low, scanning the space with her flashlight. At first, she didn't see anything. The shadows had grown. The night had deepened. She felt a flicker of doubt. And then movement. From behind the dumpster, 2 golden eyes blinked in the dark, faintly catching the beam of her light. He was still there, still curled, still watching. She knelt slowly, unwrapped the napkin, and placed the food gently on the ground a few feet away. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to come out. It's just for you." The dog didn't move forward, but he didn't move away either. He just lowered his head, his ears twitching at the sound of her voice. She stayed for a while, not speaking again, just sitting in the quiet. When she finally stood to go, she felt it, that same soft pull in her chest. A thread, a promise. She would come back. The next evening, Anna returned to the alley before the sky had fully turned dark. The streetlights were beginning to flicker awake, and the air had the brittle, dry sharpness of a night too cold for comfort. She moved carefully, holding a small plastic bowl of water in one hand and a sandwich crust wrapped in foil in the other. Her flashlight beam danced softly across the alley walls as she approached the dumpster again. Her heart thumped quietly beneath her coat, not with fear, but with a kind of fragile hope. And when she rounded the corner, he was there, just as before. The dog hadn't moved far. He was curled up tight, nose buried beneath his tail, his body shivering despite the shelter of the dumpster wall. The fur along his side was matted with dirt and dried blood, and one front paw was tucked beneath him awkwardly, as if it hurt to place it on the ground. The collar that should have told the world his name, his home, his worth, it was gone. Nothing marked him now. Just bones, silence, and a pair of tired golden eyes that lifted when she arrived. Anna knelt slowly, setting the water and food down a few feet away. She didn't speak at first. She remembered what silence could offer, a kind of comfort the world too often rushed past. When she did speak, it was low and steady, like a lullaby for something wild. "I brought you something," she whispered. "You don't have to come. I'll leave it right here." The dog didn't move, didn't even blink for a moment, but his ears twitched at the sound of her voice. His eyes followed her hand as she set the foil gently on the concrete. And then, as she sat back on her heels and waited, he slowly lifted his head. He didn't come closer. Not that night. But he didn't run either. And for Anna, that was enough. Over the next few nights, this silent ritual became something sacred. After dinner, after homework, after the rest of the world had shut down for the evening, Anna would gather scraps of food, refill the little water bowl, and slip out through the back gate. She never spoke about it. Not to her parents. Not to her brother. It was her secret, a promise kept in footsteps and quiet offerings. And each night, when she turned the corner of the alley, she would find him waiting. Not standing. Not approaching. But present. Watching. Breathing. Trusting. Just enough to stay. She started calling him Shadow. The name felt right, like something soft and strong at the same time. He was always just at the edge of the light, moving quietly, vanishing before others could notice. But to her he was real, solid, beautiful even in his brokenness. One evening, as she sat cross-legged a little farther down the alley, tossing tiny pieces of chicken toward the dumpster, something changed. Shadow wagged his tail. It was small, barely more than a slow, uncertain sweep across the concrete, but it made Anna gasp softly. Her heart squeezed. That gentle flicker of joy meant everything. It meant he was beginning to remember something the world had nearly stolen from him: trust. But the world, as it often does, reminded her too quickly how easily that trust could be shattered. It was a Tuesday when it happened. The sun hadn't fully set yet. Anna had arrived earlier than usual, clutching half a muffin from school and a packet of turkey slices she'd saved from her lunch. Shadow was there, nestled into his usual spot. He didn't move, but his ears perked up when he saw her. She smiled and knelt, whispering, "Hey, it's me." Then, from behind her, a crash. A man in a delivery uniform kicked open the side door of the grocery store and tossed a large black bag of garbage toward the dumpster. It landed with a heavy thud, scattering crumbs and cans and old produce. The man didn't see her, didn't care. "Stupid mutt," he muttered as he turned back inside, slamming the door hard enough to make the metal walls shake. Shadow jolted violently, trying to scramble backward, his injured paw slipping on the concrete. His eyes went wide, body trembling all over again. He pressed himself flat against the wall, panting heavily. Anna froze. She didn't move toward him, didn't speak. She just watched, and in that moment, understood. This wasn't just a stray. This wasn't hunger or loneliness or being left behind. This was fear, the kind that came from pain, real pain, delivered by hands that should never have touched him. Someone had hurt him, badly, and that fear had etched itself into his bones. She didn't try to pet him. She didn't try to pull him out. She just whispered, "I'm so sorry." The words were small, nearly swallowed by the wind, but she meant them with everything inside her. That night, when she went home, she didn't draw pictures in her notebook. She didn't write poems or count stars. She just stared at her ceiling, the image of Shadow flinching burned into her mind like a scar that didn't belong to her, but still hurt all the same. Anna waited 3 days before she tried telling her parents. It was during dinner, when the kitchen was filled with the clatter of forks and the soft hum of the television in the background. Her father scrolled through something on his phone while her mother rubbed her temple between bites, her eyes still wearing the fatigue of the office. Anna pushed her mashed potatoes around her plate, watching the patterns they made, and finally said quietly, "There's a dog behind the grocery store." Her mother barely looked up. "A stray?" she asked. "It's cold. Maybe we could call someone," Anna replied. Her father sighed and set his phone down. "Anna, it's not our problem. The city handles things like that. Don't go near it, okay? Stray dogs can be dangerous." The conversation moved on before she could explain. They didn't ask what he looked like. They didn't ask what made her bring it up. And just like that, the subject was gone, folded under the noise of cutlery and reruns. At school, she tried again. Her teacher, Miss Powell, was kind, but always busy. Anna stayed after class, clutching a drawing she'd made, a sketch of Shadow curled behind the dumpster, his sad eyes peeking out. She placed it on the desk and said softly, "He's been there a long time. I think he's hurt." Miss Powell smiled gently, glancing at the drawing. "That's a lovely picture, Anna. Very expressive." She tapped her pen against a stack of grading sheets and said, "I'm sure animal control knows what to do if there's a stray. Thank you for sharing." Anna nodded, folded the paper back up, and walked out without another word. Even her classmates laughed when they overheard. "You're still feeding that trash dog?" One boy snorted at recess. "It probably bites people." Another chimed in, "Bet it's got fleas the size of your thumb." They weren't mean in a cruel way, just careless, loud, certain. The kind of certainty that leaves no room for questions. Anna didn't answer. She just sat on the swings, hands gripping the cold metal chains, her feet barely moving. That night, she curled into herself under her blanket, holding her notebook against her knees. She wrote, slowly, carefully, "He's not trash. He's scared." The letters came out shaky at first, but steadied with each word. She drew Shadow again, this time with a soft blanket over his back, food in a little bowl, stars above them both. It was a picture of a world that didn't exist yet, but maybe could. She didn't stop going back. Not when her parents told her to stay out of alleys. Not when the weather turned colder. She layered 2 jackets over her thin sweater, stuffed food into the same foil wrap every evening, and added an old towel from the garage to her bag. When she reached the dumpster that night, Shadow was already waiting. She laid the towel out near his corner, careful not to get too close, and whispered, "For you." He didn't move at first. But once she stepped back and sat across from him, flashlight resting on her knee, she saw him inch forward, nose twitching. He sniffed the towel cautiously, then, slowly, lowered himself onto it. A soft whine escaped his throat. Not fear. Something else. Relief, maybe. Recognition. It was a quiet kind of victory, but it felt like the biggest thing in the world. Days passed. Anna's visits became routine, like brushing teeth or tying shoes. Each one added another thread to the invisible bond growing between her and Shadow. She brought bits of boiled egg, a broken chew toy she found under the porch, even her favorite old scarf once, frayed at the edges, but warm. He still didn't come too close. But he didn't shake anymore when she spoke. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. She was kneeling near the dumpster, pouring water into a plastic lid, when she heard a slow shuffling behind her. She turned and saw an older man standing at the side door of the grocery store, holding a broom. He had a worn flannel jacket, a thick gray beard, and eyes that didn't miss much. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked down at the dog, then at her, then back at the towel. "You been coming here for him?" he asked. Anna nodded slowly, unsure if she was in trouble. "He yours?" She shook her head. "No. I just found him." The man leaned on the broom and sighed through his nose. "Been seeing him for a while. Poor guy never budged when I came out. Always figured he was just waiting for something." He paused. "Didn't know it was you." Anna looked up at him, wide-eyed. "Is he going to be okay?" The man studied the dog for a moment, watching as Shadow lifted his head but stayed still. "Don't know," he said honestly. "But you're the first person who's done anything for him." He didn't scold her, didn't tell her to leave. He just nodded once and went back inside. It wasn't much, but it was the first time someone hadn't looked away. The janitor returned the next evening, not with a broom this time, but with something heavier in his eyes. He had seen enough. He watched Anna crouched near the dumpster again, feeding Shadow from her hands, that same slow trust-building night after night. She hadn't noticed him yet. Her coat was buttoned all the way up, scarf wrapped tight, but her small hands were bare, pink from the cold. Still, she moved gently, whispering softly, placing her offerings with care. The dog, once curled and distant, now sat upright, tail flicking cautiously when she approached. The old man took a breath, walked a little closer, and said, "He comes to you." His voice didn't surprise her. She just turned her head and gave a small nod. "I think he's waiting for something," she said. The janitor looked down at the dog, at the old wound along his paw, the missing collar, the hollowed-out look behind his amber eyes. Then he knelt with a slow grunt and said, more to himself than anyone else, "This dog's been through hell." He told her to wait a minute and shuffled back inside. Anna didn't know what he was doing, but she stayed. She always did. When he returned, he had a flip phone in his hand and a quietness about him that felt serious. He made a call right there in the alley. "Yeah," he said. "I've got a situation you might want to see. Real gentle dog, but scared out of his skin. Could be injured. Could be worse." He gave the address, nodded once, and hung up. Then he looked at Anna and said, "You stay right here with him. Help's coming." About 20 minutes later, a van pulled slowly into the alley, unmarked, quiet, deliberate. The headlights were dimmed, and the driver didn't slam the door when he got out. Instead, a tall man in a navy jacket with a patch on the sleeve walked over like he'd done this 100 times. He nodded at the janitor, then crouched several feet away, observing the dog and the girl. Shadow was already tense, body low to the ground, eyes tracking the stranger's every move. The man kept his voice soft. "He's guarding you," he said to Anna. "But he's scared." Anna looked down at Shadow. "He's not bad," she whispered. "He just doesn't trust people yet." "Fair enough," the officer said. "Can you get him closer?" She didn't answer. She just reached into her pocket, pulled out a piece of chicken she'd wrapped in napkin, and placed it on her open palm. "Hey, it's me," she murmured. "It's okay. You know me." She leaned in a little. Shadow whined softly, his ears flat, but after a moment he stepped forward. One step, then another. Then his nose touched her hand, and he took the chicken from her fingers. The man moved carefully, sliding a slip leash over Shadow's neck while Anna gently ran her hand over his head. The dog flinched but didn't pull away. "That's a good boy," she whispered, and his tail wagged once, unsure but real. Inside the van, they wrapped him in a warm blanket and scanned for a microchip. Anna sat on the edge of the step, her knees drawn up, watching every movement like it might change everything. The scanner beeped. The officer's brow furrowed. "He's chipped," he said. "We've got a number." He stepped aside to make a call, voice hushed. Anna couldn't hear what he was saying, but when he came back, his tone was different. "His name's not Shadow," he said quietly. "It's Duke. He was reported stolen. Almost 3 years ago." The air left Anna's lungs all at once. Stolen? Not just lost, not just abandoned. Someone had taken him. Someone had hurt him. And now, somehow, after all this time, he had found his way back, through her. The vet clinic was a blur. The officers had taken Duke straight there, and Anna had gone too, not officially invited, but no one told her to leave either. The janitor drove her, said nothing the whole way. The vet was a kind woman with steady hands and soft eyes who knelt to examine Duke and whispered to him like she'd known him forever. She looked at his injuries, the old scars, the untreated paw, the missing tooth, and said quietly, this wasn't just neglect. Someone hurt him. Badly. Anna sat beside the examination table, her feet swinging off the edge, her fingers curled into her lap. She didn't cry. She just watched. The entire clinic smelled like antiseptic and kindness, and for the first time in days, Shadow, no Duke, was safe. When the call came that the original owners had been found, Anna didn't know how to feel. Part of her was happy. This was good news. Wasn't it? A family that had never stopped hoping. A dog that was no longer forgotten. But part of her felt something else. Not jealousy. Just wait. As if something that had quietly become hers might soon be taken away. The family arrived 2 hours later. A man and a woman in their 40s, holding a photo in a cracked frame and a leash that hadn't been used in years. The moment they saw him, they gasped. "Duke!" the woman cried. Her voice cracked, and her knees buckled as she pressed her hands over her mouth. The man stood frozen. The dog lifted his head, ears flicking, but didn't move. Not right away. He looked at them the way someone might look at a song they half remember, familiar, but distant. When the woman stepped forward, he sniffed her hand and licked it once. But then his eyes turned toward the doorway. Waiting. Anna stepped into the room. Duke's ears perked up fully. His body lifted. His tail, once hesitant, began to sweep the air in wide, slow arcs. He walked toward her, unsteady but sure, and leaned his head into her chest. The room was silent. The woman's hand went to her heart. The man blinked rapidly and knelt. "I think he remembers you," he said. Anna didn't know what to say. She just looked down at the dog, this brave, broken soul who had chosen her, even when the world hadn't. And in that moment, she understood something quietly powerful. She hadn't just found him. He had found her too. They let Anna stay in the room while Duke rested on the blanket the vet had laid down. He was clean now, or at least cleaner, the grime scrubbed gently from his coat, the wounds cleaned, the worst of the pain dulled with medicine. But his eyes still held that old weariness, that watchfulness he had carried through the alley. The original family sat a few feet away, unsure. The mother had cried when she saw him. The father's hands shook when he reached to pet the dog's back. They whispered his name, "Duke? Buddy, it's us." And he responded, politely, distantly. He wagged his tail, "Please, if you sniff them to me." But he didn't move toward them. Not the way they expected. Not the way he did with her. Anna had sat down on the floor near the wall, hands in her lap, unsure of where she fit in all of this. She hadn't said anything since the family walked in. She didn't want to intrude on something sacred. But Duke made the choice for her. After a few moments of being near his old family, he turned and walked across the room, slow but steady, and sat beside Anna. Then, with a soft grunt, he leaned into her, all the weight of his tired body resting against her arm, his nose buried near her wrist like it was the only place that had ever made sense. The room went quiet again. The mother wiped her eyes. The father looked at the vet. Then quietly at Anna. "You saved him," the man said. "You brought him back." Anna looked down at Duke. "He saved me too." No one argued, because somehow everyone understood that was true. The vet stood and gave them space, walking the parents to the side. Their voices lowered, and after a few moments of quiet conversation, the mother returned and knelt in front of Anna. Her voice was gentle, not pitying but full of something deeper. Respect. Gratitude. "You've taken care of him when no one else would," she said. "And we see how he looks at you, how he trusts you." Anna opened her mouth, but no words came. Her chest felt tight, her hands suddenly too small. "We lost him once," the woman continued. "And maybe we were meant to. Maybe he was meant to find you instead." And just like that, the decision was made. That night, Anna sat in the back seat of her father's car, with Duke's head resting on her lap, while her parents drove in silence. Her brother leaned forward from the passenger seat every so often to look at the dog, saying things like, "He's huge," or "Are we really keeping him?" But Anna didn't say much. She was too busy memorizing the shape of this new feeling, this warmth in her chest, this safety, this sense of something beautiful and real finally staying. Her parents had hesitated at first. Her mom had looked uncertain when the vet had called and explained the family's offer. Her dad had frowned and rubbed the back of his neck, already picturing the logistics, the costs, the responsibility. But when they saw how Duke, or Shadow as she still called him, laid his head gently in Anna's lap, when they saw her eyes light up in a way they hadn't in years, they both agreed without much more discussion. Something had changed. Something they hadn't even realized was missing had just walked through the door. At home, Duke explored the living room slowly, sniffing every corner, every piece of furniture, before settling onto the rug in front of the fireplace like he'd always belonged there. Anna curled up beside him, resting her cheek against his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He just sighed, a deep, tired, contented sound, and closed his eyes. In the days that followed, the house began to shift. Her dad started getting up earlier to take Duke for morning walks, coming home with stories about squirrels and old neighbors who wanted to pet him. Her mom, who used to come in and collapse onto the couch, now paused by the door to greet him, scratching behind his ears before even taking off her coat. Her brother, once always behind a screen, now took him to the park in the afternoons, tossing tennis balls and laughing in a way Anna hadn't heard in years. Anna changed too. She smiled more, laughed more, slept easier. She stopped drawing broken birds and started drawing gardens and sunrises and open doors. She began speaking a little more in class, raising her hand when she felt like it. And sometimes, when she walked home from school, Duke walked beside her like a shadow she had chosen, steady, protective, proud. People noticed. Neighbors stopped to ask about the dog. Teachers commented on her confidence. Her parents looked at her differently, not as the quiet one or the odd one, but as the girl who had found something no one else had seen. And maybe that was the point all along. Because in the end, the story wasn't just about a lost dog. It was about what happens when someone chooses to see what others overlook. About how kindness, even when whispered, can echo loud enough to be heard by a soul in hiding. About how healing doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in slow nights, small meals, soft voices. Duke had come back from a place darker than most could imagine, and so had she. Together, they had found a home, not the one they were born into, but the one they had created through quiet persistence, through love, through trust. A home chosen by the heart. The article ran in the local paper the following week. It wasn't a headline meant to shock or grab attention, just a simple title, printed in soft black ink above a grainy photo of a little girl and a big dog sitting side by side in a sunlit park. The headline read, "Girl follows cry, saves life forgotten behind a dumpster." The story was short, just a few paragraphs long, but it traveled farther than anyone expected. People read it over coffee, folded it into purses, shared it at bus stops and grocery store lines. And slowly, something began to change. In the days after the story broke, residents of the quiet little town began noticing the things they'd long walked past. A thin dog curled under a bench was no longer just a stray. A cat hiding near the abandoned post office got fresh food and a blanket. Kids walking home started looking twice when they heard something out of place. The neighborhood, once filled with noise and routine and the kind of silence that forgets to care, now carried something different. But deeper, softer. Kindness, it turned out, was contagious. At Anna's school, something strange happened too. She was called to the stage during a Friday assembly, the kind students usually slept through or fidgeted in. Her name was read from a sheet of paper, followed by a few polite claps. She walked up slowly, small hands clenched tight, head down. She wasn't used to microphones or attention. But when she stood there, the gym falling silent around her, she took a deep breath and looked out at rows of students and teachers who, until that moment, had only seen her as the quiet one. She cleared her throat once and said, "He didn't need much. Just someone to hear him." That was it. One sentence. But it was enough. The room stayed quiet for a long moment before the applause came, soft at first, then building. Her teacher wiped her eyes. Her classmates looked at her differently after that. And somewhere in the crowd, her brother was clapping louder than most. Shadow waited for her outside that day, sitting beside her father near the gate. His coat had filled in beautifully. The tired look in his eyes had faded. He stood taller now, alert and steady. When Anna walked down the school steps, he rose to meet her and leaned gently into her side, just as he had in the vet's office that night when the world had changed. They walked home together like that, girl and dog, side by side. People in the neighborhood recognized them now. Some would smile. Others would stop to say things like, "That's the girl," or "Is that the one from the paper?" But Anna didn't seek their attention. She never had. She just nodded politely and kept walking, her hand resting on Shadow's back, his steps always matching hers. Her parents changed too, not overnight, but in small, steady ways. Her mother listened more, started bringing home small treats for the dog, and sometimes sat with Anna in the evenings just to talk. Her father joked more, laughed even, the kind of laughter that sounded like it hadn't been used in years. And her brother started asking her to come with him, to the park, to the store, places they used to go separately. They were becoming a family again, one step at a time. And in all those changes, there was one constant, Shadow. Always present, always loyal, a reminder of what had been broken and what had been rebuilt. Sometimes, when Anna lay in bed at night, she would think back to that morning, the cold alley, the faint cry behind the dumpster, the moment she stopped and listened when no one else did. It still gave her chills, not out of fear, but awe. That a single choice, a pause, a step, a glance over the shoulder, could change the course of so many lives. The world didn't shift with thunder or trumpets or fanfare. It shifted in a quiet alley, because one girl heard a cry and answered it. She never thought of herself as brave, never thought of herself as a hero. She had only done what felt right. But sometimes, the smallest acts of empathy create the largest waves. And in a town that had once forgotten how to listen, Anna had reminded them. Shadow now trotted beside her like a guardian of both the present and the past, strong, steady, healed. Children would run up to pet him. Adults would nod in approval. And Anna? She would simply smile, her eyes clear, her steps light, her heart full. Because sometimes, love doesn't find you in grand moments. Sometimes, it finds you in forgotten corners, behind dumpsters, in cold wind, in the silence between footsteps. And when it does, if you're listening, you'll hear the cry too. Sometimes, the most profound connections are the ones we can't explain. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to continue exploring the mysteries of life. Until then, remember, there's magic in the unknown.